and all protocol observed. It's my pleasure again to speak to this interesting subject. But before I make any comment, let me make one or two comments that are on top of my head. One is, I think in the preparation of such a conference, Mr. Chairman, we ordinarily need to be reminded of the dress code. When I turned up for this African Liberation meeting, I realized a few people were suited up like they're in Lancaster Hall or in the White House. No, I'll spare the minister because of his position. But I can see a couple of ties and maybe remind colleagues that African liberation needs to be seen to be done. We cannot preach what we don't do. You remember when the French colonized us, one of the tools was policy of assimilation. Make them talk like we do, so you'll be talking, shaking your shoulders up. Make them walk like we do, make them dress like we do. And we still dress like them, and we come for an African liberation meeting dressed in suits. Of course, this is different from Lancaster House meeting. This is different from White House or the British Parliament. So, kind reminder, Mr. Chairman, as we... And the second important one that I have always shared with the chairman is my worry that we risk having the Pan-African movement remain as a slogan. If you look at what is happening on the continent, sometimes you worry, do we know the difference between the ideas those who started PM Pan-African movements had? Do we know the difference between that and where we are today? Or we simply carry a slogan, and to some young people, you're happy to join something called Pan-African movement, but in reality, you don't know what happens inside there. So we risk to simply keep up with a slogan of Pan-African movement, unless we, as the Honorable Minister said, we convert rhetoric into action. And this is one of the biggest challenges in all these conferences. Believe me, Fiona, we've been here in conferences, we've been everywhere in East African conferences. Africa is not short of knowledge. When you hear the presentations on this continent, you wonder where our people went to school. Brighter than all these colonizers, people who colonized us. But we only remain at rhetoric, we never put things into action. So that's a challenge that we need, the young ones, the old ones. It doesn't take a lot of effort to move things from rhetoric to action. In fact, I'm one of the biggest proponents of taking stock of what we have done. Minister is my witness here. A few of these meetings, regional meetings I attend, sometimes I ask, why are we making a new agenda? Because we have had agendas in the last couple of meetings. So of all these agendas, we had action points. So why don't we have a conference where we take stock of everything that happened in meeting 1, 2, 3, 4, and in meeting number 5, we look at what was done and what was not. But I'm sure Ambassador Sezibera knows, the resolutions of the East African community, resolutions or directives passed by the summit directives, this should happen, by the heads of state. Of those, 86% were not done. Summit directives. I hope, Ambassador Sezibera, by the time you left, that was the situation, and it has probably gone worse. So summit directives are not done. Resolutions of meetings are not done. When, at the end of every meeting, there is a very interesting document called communique. Usually a communique is prepared before the meeting takes place. So by the time we get to any of these capitals for the meeting, there's a communique, because technical officers, ministers of East Africa have already been there. Minister is my witness here. They prepare the communique before we discuss. So in short, when we come to discuss, it's formality, and that cannot take us to where we want to be. So my first other call would be, can the way of doing things change? Unless we change the way of doing things, believe me, you'll travel these capitals, you put on your neckties and you go discuss meetings, have lunch and all this, and a good communique read out. Little is done in what we do. But now, specifically back to what you asked me, the opportunities that are presented by this interesting market, and as Minister said, that was signed in Rwanda here. Believe me not, this is the first since the time of independence, from 1959, 1960, 61, and 62. The first transformative economic arrangement on this continent was the AfCFTA. And personally, I always say, this was the only chance for Africa. We take it now and make use of it. We don't take it, we are cooked. Believe me. Because if we don't, be under no illusion that there are people out there, our trading partners, name them, I don't want to give particular names, all trading partners, interested parties in the West, in the East, everywhere in Asia, all these are eyeing this animal that we came up with called Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Everybody is eyeing it. And if we are not careful, it is going to benefit them more than it does to us. Do you know how they will do it? They will recruit a couple of African countries to serve their interests and not the African interests. It has already started, by the way. What I'm saying has already started. Some countries are already signed up to act on behalf of Asia, America, where, to serve the interests of them, not the continent. How are we going to stop what has already started? That's a question to you all. So AfCFTA may end up very easily benefiting those out there, but if that doesn't happen, then what do? It means we Africans have to go to wake up now and take advantage of the following. Some of the interesting opportunities that come with the AfCFTA are strengthening our industrialization. We have industrialization is one of the things we've talked about. It's talked about everywhere, and it's the only way for us to move from where we are, producing for consumption, less and less dependence on imported materials. So we go to industrialization. Industrialization is a process. It cannot begin all of a sudden. You have to go small, piece by piece. That's why, I mean, all these industrial countries, that's how they started. Look at Japan, look at the European countries. You go small, they started by making a bicycle, then a car, then an aircraft, and all. This is the journey. But are we starting? And I think where we are in Africa is not a bad place. To an extent, we have started industrializing slowly. We make some things in Rwanda here. There are things made in East Africa here. But we should now bring our efforts together and make good of the energies that we have and the potential that we have. But instead, I will come back to later in the challenges, why we don't do it. But industrialization is one of the things that now should come to a large scale. Let me tell you an interesting lesson, an interesting story. When we were discussing implementation of the AfCFTA some time back in Addis Ababa, something called the United States U.S. Council of Africa. USA has a council for Africa. Africa has no council for America. But USA has a council for, now, when we go to a meeting in Addis Ababa to discuss as Africans, the leaders of the meeting were Americans guiding us on what we should be doing, including what we should discuss. And one of the things they urged our colleagues from Nigeria was, be careful about AfCFTA because there's a lot of production. You Nigerians produce a lot of parts, vehicle parts, steel, a lot of steel. Once you open up the continent, your steel is going to find no market. So be careful. Since you are manufacturers of steel in Nigeria are quite a huge number. They influence the Chamber of Commerce of Nigeria. So they influenced the president initially, if you recall. The president of Nigeria ratified the agreement much later because the Confederation of Industries told him, Mr. President, don't sign. When you sign, our market for steel is going to collapse. You can imagine that kind of thinking. And he held back. So until we had discussions, but who was behind this? I've told you the corporate council. It's called Corporate Council for Africa. So until we form our own Corporate Council for America, you can be sure it is going to take us time. But industrialization is one of the opportunities that presents. Job creation itself, job creation. Let me say this. Lots of our young people are unemployed. And one of the things we see on the continent are challenges, as a big challenge is unemployment. All these movements you see around, Gen Z movement, they are pushing this and this, they want to remove governments, they want to fight. It's because they lack what to do. They're looking for employment. And employment is in this opportunity presented by Africa. But how do we do it? the one thing that we ought to do is open up the borders of Africa. Because who said that we can only work, Rwandese must work here? But as we say this, and I'm glad to Togo, which opened up its borders the other day, but a big question to all of you sitting in this room, Pan-Africa, Mr. Chairman, why are borders of Africa closed? Why? Pan-Africanist slogan, as I said. But we are here, our borders are closed. You need a visa to go to a visa or permission to go to trade with, permission even to take knowledge. Doctors here cannot move services. I'm going to services. Doctors, how many Nigerian doctors are in Kigali here? None. You Rwandan doctors, why don't you operate in somewhere in Lagos? You're not there. So why do we close our borders? So employment is a challenge for Africa, but yet we are still closing our borders. So one of the things we should do is remove all these visa requirements for African countries. Why do we need them? So there was one example 2 weeks ago, I think last week, we clapped for Togo, and I remember making a tweet that Togo has done, but where is the rest of you, Africa? Couple of opportunities in the food industry. The population of Africa that the Minister talked about, everybody eats at most 2 meals a day. But the food we produce, we eat it raw. We don't even make money from it. In some communities, they grow much more than they can consume. They produce a lot of it goes to waste. Yet, if we treated this food a little bit, if we added a bit of value, so now this creates, on one hand, it creates jobs, but on the other, small industry that creates, changes this food we produce into more. There's lots of bananas, for example, produced here. Lately, I'm sure you have seen, I've seen in the Kigali markets, banana chips, dried, turned into chips for export. Fantastic. But now look at the potatoes that we produce. Look at everything produced in East Africa. Take East Africa alone. Do you know, as East Africa, what we produce here is able to feed the population of USA satisfactorily? But we need to add value, so create some form of industries, simple industries, because we shall advance to the next level of producing cars at later, but at least now we are assembling cars. But let's begin by small industry. At some point, we shall go to medium industry. Then 2063, that Madame Monique is saying, 2063, we should be able to manufacture a car. Why not? But you can imagine, since time immemorial, people produced bicycles, but we can't produce a bicycle in Rwanda here. We can't even produce tires for a bicycle. We can't even produce brakes. Do you know any factory for brakes of bicycles? Anybody produces? So now when the youth are telling you they have no jobs, look at how many bicycles are in Rwanda. Bicycles. Every bicycle is using 2 brake pads, I think. What? Or 4, 2 behind and 2 in front. Who is producing brakes for bicycles? Nobody. So these are some of the simple things that would create employment, create money, and enable us to move to the next step. Because when you produce brakes, the next thing you want to produce something else, and so you advance. Last week I saw somebody in Nyagatare somewhere. A young man decided to create a vehicle. He got a generator, fixed it in front of a wheelbarrow, traditional wheelbarrow, put something behind, and now the man can harvest using the machine. He has put small-scale industry. Reduce the dependence on markets. It's also an opportunity. We do not have to depend on these foreign markets, comrades of this continent. Why do we depend on, including razor blades, including needles, including buttons? Who of you, look at what you have dressed in, all your buttons, all your zip, the machine. Which one is made in Africa? 0. So where are we? What's the problem? So once we start, we start thinking through and being less dependent on the West and out there, we'll crack our heads and say, but what does it take to make a zip? What does it take to make a button? What does it take to make, all these things? Somebody talked about value addition. I don't want to go back to that, but let me talk about innovation. You know, once you are used on dependency syndrome, you can never actually think, because these things will come. So one of the things we need is innovation. And what should steer us now into innovation? According to you, what should steer us into innovation? Because the demands are there. Africa has a lot of demand of goods and services, too many goods and services. One of the challenges we have in this region that we keep seeing is, why do we need all this? Why there is a lot of innovation? One is we are still closing our borders, but on the other, we are still envious of the other. Did you know? Did you know that, including East Africa, here around us, people are envious. You produce one item here, you produce milk here in Nyagatare, you cannot take it to Tanzania. Tanzania will put a tax that is higher than the production of the liter of milk. You produce it for $2, they put a tax of $4. Why? Simple, because Rwanda should not succeed with its milk. So until we get rid of this whole, sometimes I don't get the right word, it's not even rivalry. Because two poor people cannot be in rivalry for anything. You are all poor, and then you are trying to challenge each other as to who is worse off than the other. I mean, you're all poor people. So rivalry is another challenge that we see, but again, it creates an opportunity that should be taken advantage of to produce. So innovation is one of the things that we need. Look at food items, look at medical services, look at everything to do with animal husbandry, animal resources. Look at the milk we produce. The milk alone in this region. How much cheese do we export? But do we send to the market as enough cheese as Switzerland sends to the world market? Those of you who are good in keeping animals, are you producing cheese? Is our cheese on the highest standard? Then I go to the other thing now called standards. Standards is one other thing that we need to work on. It presents a very interesting opportunity that opens up the market, because if you don't, let me tell you, do you know who sets the standards for some of the products that should be on the market? Did you know, for example, that pyrethrum, which we grow here, pyrethrum we grow in Musanze. In fact, Rwanda is number 2 in the world. The world has only 2 producers of organic pyrethrum. One is Australia, the next one is Rwanda. Organic pyrethrum. Pyrethrum is what we use for storage in some of these stores of cocoa. So 2 sources in the world, Rwanda and Australia. So meaning Rwanda should be satisfying the market of pyrethrum completely. But do you know who sets the standard? United Kingdom sat down and said, you know what? Let's introduce 7 levels of certification. So much so that Rwanda can never fulfill the 7. It must have component XYZ. It must have you chemists. Where were you? They introduced 7 levels of certification. Everything defined by a certain chemical component. You miss this, you lack this. So inevitably, Rwanda could not send its pyrethrum to Ghana here. Instead, we gave our pyrethrum to UK. UK ticked all the boxes, because for us as Rwanda, they had marked as X. You don't fulfill this, X. This one, X. This one, X. So we didn't qualify. So what do? They tell us, send the pyrethrum to UK, and sell it to us at only $300 per kilo. 300. Do you know how much? So our pyrethrum goes to UK. Do you know how much they sell it to Ghana? To Ghana, they sell it to $1,400. When Rwanda has given it 300. And you know what? They did not add anything. The only thing they removed was the paper for certification. When it goes to Ghana, there's nothing they add. They only change the paper, they say, made in UK and export for Ghana. It took us a whole fight. I remember presenting it to the minister when he was here in AfCFTA. A whole fight to say, come on, why is Rwanda having to go through UK to sell its? So it actually had to go to the attention of the 2 heads of state one day when they met in Kigali here. The head of state of Ghana and our president. And they discussed and said, Where's the problem? Why don't we, after all, Rwanda Air goes to Accra every day. So why don't we put 400 kilograms every morning and the game ends there? Why are we going to the UK to look for certification? Won't it work? It will work. Finished. Do you know what happened next? Letter of protest from the High Commission of the United Kingdom in Kigali. Why is Rwanda interfering in our market? Why are they supplying directly? Why are they supplying directly to Ghana? So that noise will never stop, but what we need to do as Africans is to know the game also and play the game according to our own rules.